Alright, hey guys. So now we're on to designing the props. So what I'm going to do here at this phase is we're going to use the same reference here. I'm going to go ahead and grab this element. And in this case scenario, I'm going to do the same thing here. Where I'm going to grab this bit, and this time, instead of just kind of randomly overlapping things, I want to show a different way about going about implementing shapes. So if there's a certain part or certain element that you like about the T-Rex form language or whatever object that you are using, you are more than free to use certain elements. So what if I can just go and grab just this portion because I think it's an interesting shape? And what if I grabbed this element here? And because I'm actually extracting specific shapes, it's giving me more areas where I can treat these as individual design languages or individual elements within the overall inspiration, right? So instead of using the entire T-Rex skull, I went ahead and I only used certain areas that I thought would be interesting or valid enough for me to use in a more controlled way. So I have this Canon reference here, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it just in case, and I'm going to drop the opacity here, and I'm going to start overlaying parts and just kind of see what we can do to kind of integrate and overlay onto the actual design. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually just kind of trying to form fit it and see if I can come up with an interesting arrangement of design, you know, to kind of make this read as not only as a canon, but as a canon that's inspired by this kind of dinosaur bone-like aesthetic. So I'm going to overlay this here. And again, we're going to use a rule of you know, 80-20. And here's the thing about that is it's all about just distribution, right? So I don't want 50% of the dinosaur bone to be added here and the 50% to be a canon. But what if it's a little bit more bone than you know, the actual original element? So it can be 60-40. It can be 70-30. Or it can be 80-20, right? So whatever your distribution is, or 90-10 being really dramatic. So whatever your distribution is, it can be, you know, 60% bone, or 40% original, or it can be 70% bone, 30%, and so on. So you just want to make sure that it's not 50-50, because that is going to make for a very stagnant and very even design, okay? So I'm going to use this basic rule of thumb to kind of measure out how much I want the actual form language to influence my design here. So it's something that you just keep in mind. You know, you don't have to be so mathematical with it, but it's just something that I think about when I'm designing. You know, how much have I used that element? Did I overuse it, or, you know, is this something that I can actually you know, is it not overused? Is it something I can push even more? You know, so it's just a good visual gauge for me to kind of see what I can do to kind of further my designs. So I'm just going ahead and kind of plotting in here, just kind of what I can do to really make some extra additions to this. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of compile all this into one layer. And then from here, I'm going to just kind of drop the opacity. Okay. Don't forget to desaturate. And these objects here, I'm going to desaturate as well. Or you can drop the opacity actually. Having a little bit of color is not too bad on the actual image. So you can kind of see the separation of the two. But if you want to desaturate just to get a better look at it, you may do so. But definitely dropping the opacity allows you to kind of see the design very clearly. Okay, I'm probably going to add a little bit more because it's still relatively or predominantly, you know, in the Canon range. I think I'm going to make it very, very much, you know, in the range of an, you know, 80-20, or it favors more of the actual, you know, T-Rex bone aesthetic. And you can see how kind of crude I am with it, in the sense that I'm literally just kind of erasing away and trying to find ways to kind of, you know, put this all together. This is what I call visual kit bashing. And literally this has become, it's literally a dinosaur that's been sculpted around this cannon, right? So this is something that serves as a form language, but also just thematically it's very apparent. So it kind of goes back to my original point about apparent designs versus something that's a little bit more subtle. So this is definitely more the apparent design. Okay, so with this, now I'm gonna actually go ahead and start designing on top, start drawing on top here. So I have kind of the hole here. I just made a selection, and I'm gonna make a stroke. So what I did was I made a right click, stroke, and I'm gonna do about 2 pixels. It's about a decent size here, and I'm gonna go ahead and use this to kind of, let's make it a 1 pixel. Actually, it might be nice and more refined looking. Gonna go ahead and start kind of blocking out a majority of the actual rings around this thing before I start drawing out the rest of the forms here. So I'm still using that flat brush for those of you curious. And then I'm going to go ahead and just start drawing in the design. So I'm imagining that, you know, this is kind of more of a I guess like of a stylized cannon that's been kind of fitted, you know, on a base, using the base of a T-Rex skull to kind of supply, you know, a little bit of armor, but also just aesthetically to kind of to have that theme, right? So this is very, very much based on that, like, okay, there's this group of people that obviously use dinosaur bones to kind of create armor, but also they use it because it might be a very strong structure to kind of create, you know, some sort of frame or chassis or whatever it might be. And it might be just purely decorative, you know? So it doesn't have to always be something that's like, you know, purely functional, but that's where subjective design is. If it's purely decorative and it's more in the sense of an aesthetic rather than functional, then that's just based on what you would want, right? Or what we want to create for a cool visual. Now where it becomes objective is if there's a culture, or if there's like some sort of rhyme and reason for why we need to use a dinosaur bone to make this work, then that becomes an objective design choice. So that's just something to keep in mind, guys, as you're designing. There's some things that are very, very clearly subjective, just to make things look really visually appealing and cool. And you know, it's what you want for your design. It's what's appropriate for your own taste and your own exploration. And there's things that are objective. You know, if there's a certain goal or problem that you need to solve, then we need to objectively identify what that is and then implement that into our design. So here I'm actually going ahead and tracing these bone elements as clearly as I can. And again, like when I'm at this phase, it's all just kind of visual, right? It's like, okay, well, I know that I got this bone like shape here, and at a certain point I gotta see how this can all come together, right? So I know I got this wood element here, and maybe the bone here actually wraps around that, and it's just creating kind of this really well reinforced structure using natural materials and also materials from the actual skeleton. Okay, keep on doodling here. And again, guys, if you guys at any point have any questions, feel free to email me at jp@gmail.com. Okay, I'll try my best to answer any questions regarding this type of exercise or regarding anything of the demo. Because I know a lot of this stuff might be foreign to you guys, and some of it might be very familiar. So for those of you that's familiar with this, you know, that's welcome back to Form Language. And for those of you that are brand new to this, welcome to Form Language. That was such a cheesy thing to say, but felt like I needed to welcome those that are new to this thing. Okay, so what I'm thinking here is this is like some sort of like covering, right? Just so that the wheels in the front don't get blasted. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it's a covering and it's connected to the side of this bearing. And that's my logic for why this bone piece, this scapula looking thing is on here. And so that's going to be my rhyme and reason for why that's going to coexist in just that part of that area. And I'm going to add in this piece here, and then just kind of start revealing just some of the parts from the photograph of what's back there. And it can literally be just from the reference, you know, and it's okay. Actually quite alright to kind of go back to the reference and then try to pull, you know, pre-existing elements to kind of make some of this stuff make a little bit more sense out of some of these pieces. So when you're doing like wheels and stuff like that, what's good is to create a separate layer, okay, and make a marquee, an elliptical marquee, and try to make that same degree of ellipse, and just try to literally copy it, right? Copy it over, and so that you don't have to do this all by hand, and it'll make your life so much easier, you know, because drawing ellipses traditionally or by hand is incredibly hard, and it's probably the most painful thing to try to do accurately. So I literally use the ellipse tool like this to kind of get that all in, and then I fill in any extra detail, you know, by hand. And that's going to be the spokes here. So we're going to do all of that just by copying, right? Because design-wise, you know, I'm going to keep this the same. You know, I'm not going to put, you know, dinosaur ribs. If you want to go that far, you may. But this, I'm going to just keep it fairly close, or basically exactly the same as our reference. And the way I'm doing the lines here, I'm just using shift-click just to make the process a lot faster, so that I don't have to, you know, physically draw the lines by hand. And the reason why I actually put this on a separate layer is so that I can actually copy it over. And I'll show you guys in a second why I'm going to do that. So I have all of this on one separate layer, right? And I'm going to go ahead and copy this over because I have another tire here, right? And this other tire, I'm actually going to squash and try to place. Now, it might not be perfect only due to the degree of the thickness of the ellipse, but it comes close enough so that we don't have to draw in all of the meticulous details that's represented on the inside. So I only have to draw one side, which is fine. And I'm just going to get that degree here. So that way it's all kind of, it's like we're just representing it, you know? And now I have all of that. It's all in there. So I can go ahead and erase the parts that are clearly overlapping, like the bones and everything. That's clearly overlapping here. And anything else. I think for the most part that should cover it. And then I'm going to go back to this layer here. And I'm going to erase the parts that are being overlapped as well. Like the cannon is overlapping it. And there's just some parts here like the wooden structure here and some of the bones. And also even the bones here. So I'm going to go ahead and overlap that, or actually just erase it because I know it's being overlapped, and just continue drawing some of that bone coverage. So what's great about doing these exercises, guys, is that at a certain point when you're designing, you've literally kind of become a master of this kind of design language of bones, right? Or using bones or anything skeletal in your designs, that you start to understand some of the cadences and, you know, repeating motifs, repeating things that you've just drawn, right? And so at any time I need to do designs that require me to indicate or apply a bone-like material, I can always refer back to what I learned from analyzing the bones, or what I learned from actually applying the bone designs onto these props or character designs. So that's kind of the benefit of you know, doing all of these exercises, is, you know, you're actually building your own visual vocabulary and ultimately building your own design sense. So that's the great part about this. Okay, let's go ahead and just kind of add this little part here. It's kind of like a little lock mechanism so that the wheel doesn't fly off as it's rolling. And now let's reveal what's underneath. Alright, so we have basically the line drawing here, and we got all of the bone-like materials here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. And we have this element here, and that's our drawing. Right? So it's actually looks out pretty good. You know, it's different. It has a lot of things going on. There's clearly areas that are very more bone-like than more cannon-like, which kind of served the exact purpose. You know, it represents in the actual designs, and you know, we're showing just hints of the cannons. You know, actually the structure of it, the wheels and all that stuff. So this is exactly what I wanted to get on this design. So when we look at it, we're like, okay, that's some crazy bone-like looking, you know, cannon dinosaur thing, you know, and it just shows from all the different intricate textures and stuff like that. So let's see here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just double up and erase away, just to kind of get a nice line weight here. Probably gonna go ahead and just make this a clear overlap. When we look at it, and that's just something that we haven't really seen, right? I mean, it's thematically a dinosaur looking cannon, but it's just constructed in a way that it's done as if it's constructed by, you know, by normal means. You know, it's done as if, you know, people were just building the materials and, you know, applying it on top. Just gonna go ahead and beef up the line weight here on these overlaps before we apply the gray. And feel free to spend more time than I'm showing on the demo. Obviously the demo is only a visual exercise so that you guys get the concept. You know, after, you know, a typical design exercise that I do is I'll actually do a ton of these, probably maybe 20 to 30 of these before I pick one and actually flush it out into a full-blown illustration. So this is something that's, you know, a part of the design process and a part of the illustration concept art process, where I'll actually just do multiple variations of this before selecting one. Okay, so at this point, now we can just go ahead and colorize this guy. Use the same gray from our previous sketch. I should go ahead and fill it in with this little gray here, just so we can see the silhouette. It's funny how, like, certain elements or certain moments in drawing, it requires you to think so much, and certain moments is just purely laborious, right? So like when you're filling in the drawing with gray, it's like my brain literally gets a moment to kind of like just chill out and relax. And then, you know, there's times when, like, when I'm designing, I have to like really concentrate, right? And I'm sure we all share that, right? And it's funny, like, I actually look forward to just kind of filling in my designs at times, because it's like, okay, I did all the hard part. Now I can just like relax. Like, at times I just wish I can reach this point faster. I'm like, please let me just finish this. I just want to get through to my drawing and just like, I just want to fill it in with gray. Or like even painting, I feel like when I do environments, you know, I have that same notion where, you know, the design and the layout is so much more, you know, mentally like stressful, that like I can't wait till the point where I get to just kind of start painting or do the lighting. At least, like, that's the least stressful part for me, because you know, everything's already kind of done. It's now just, you're just staging it, you're just making it look cool or moody, or, you know, whatever kind of like tone or lighting mood you're going for. now, since we're at this point, we can now move on to doing the weapons. Alright. Okay, so now we got a cannon. We're all good to go. Alright. So now let's start working on some of these weapons here. So I pulled out two different silhouettes here just so we can kind of do a little bit more exploring and designing and stuff. I'm gonna do one that's very extreme and one that's more subtle. So let's go ahead and start off with our dinosaur reference here. And the extreme version is literally you can just do this, right? You can say, oh wow, it's totally just using the top of the dinosaur skull and putting a handle on it. Now, at this phase, there's nothing really wrong with it, you know, because you're basically saying, well, the guy or our character or whatever the design intention was to kind of sever the head of a dinosaur and literally mount it onto, you know, a pre-existing sword and say that, okay, this is literally a dinosaur sword, right? It's like, it's just using the dinosaur as a sword. Now, if we wanted to get creative with it, what if we used elements that we think is very threatening from the dinosaur? So that can literally be the teeth and the jaw, right? So that's where, you know, we can use elements like this to kind of convey, you know, the sharp blade or the sharp part of the dinosaur. And that can be something that's unique. That is a unique feature to the sword, you know? It's like, okay, obviously you slayed something that has teeth and you used the teeth as a weapon. I think in some tribal countries they actually use like alligators as a form of like a weapon. Like they'll take the jaws of an alligator and apply it or something. And I'm going to go ahead and use parts of this dinosaur bone right here to just kind of give it a little bit more of that same theme, but this time I'm going to say that the bone here, the negative space, is what I want to kind of showcase. And the negative space, on an objective level, it provides a lot of weight to be kind of distributed. So there's not mainly meaning, you know, there's not so much weight that's built up on, you know, this material. So we're able to use the airy holes as a way to kind of distribute out the weight of the blade. So that can be my reasoning for why there's holes, you know. And this stuff here, we can continue on. And we can just kind of go with this and see what we can come up with. So I'll have that for one version. And the other version can be maybe a little bit more, maybe it's something that's more based off of the silhouette. So what I'll do here is I'll take a section of it and I'm literally going to darken it. And I'm going to use this, the silhouette of this, to kind of be the basis of our weapon here. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of erase away some of these shapes here, just so it can add to the silhouette. And I'm going to actually duplicate the silhouette here and just kind of use it in this creative fashion, just to kind of see if we can get a different shape, a different texture that's not inspired by the textures, or a different shape but that's not heavily inspired by all of the the heavy textures of the actual bone itself. So this is, we get to just analyze and look at the silhouettes here and the small silhouette shapes here. So this is another way of going about designing and utilizing this portion of the dinosaur skull into your designs. Okay, so with this in mind, let's go ahead and actually start sketching on top of this stuff, since we have all of this laid out. Okay, so what I'm going to say is, one, this top piece, this is obviously and clearly using bone-like materials, right? So it's easy for me to just sketch and trace what I see here as best as I can. And literally this weapon, we can justify the shape of it by saying, okay, well, the blacksmith or whoever crafted this weapon killed this creature and literally made a weapon out of it. You know, it's to kind of show the bravery, but also just how dangerous the jaws of this creature is, and that it's being utilized as a weapon, right? And everything, all of the little textures and artifacts, I'm gonna try to represent as much as I can. You know, because it's literally all teeth. It's all teeth and bones. So here I'm going to literally draw all the teeth here. And that's what's going to serve as my form language for this weapon. And you can take some liberties here, and I'm going to go ahead and you know, kind of stretch the teeth out. Don't feel obligated and feel like you have to be a slave to the photo. You know, feel free to kind of adjust and move things around according to your own liking, you know. And even here, I can have kind of the rusted elements, you know, and this can actually be, we can say, oh, it was the bottom part of the actual jaw or something. Just to kind of justify why this thing is so big. You know, we were saying that, okay, well, it was a big creature, and when you know, when the creature was slayed, the jaws of this creature were literally ripped out to turn into a weapon. And I'm going to try to get in all of these little fractured elements to indicate that it is a bone. Maybe there's a little bit more teeth here, extra teeth, just like baby teeth or something kind of growing that hasn't been fully developed, but it just shows kind of the viciousness of this creature's mouth. You know, that's kind of like very shark-like, you know. And just the way it's applied here too, it's like, okay, it's mounted to this, what looks like a kind of a metal guard. And maybe it's mounted in a very rudimentary fashion. Maybe it's done in a way that there's literally rope or some sort of material that keeps all the stuff interweaved and put together. And this stuff, this will justify how it's all composed together. And maybe this part is literally just a bone, right? It's like part of the dinosaur bone or something. And maybe this is just a tooth. It's like a large tooth. So literally this thing is 80 to 90% bone. 10% is literally just the extra materials that it's made out of, right? Just the rope and whatnot. And the fact that it's been handcrafted. Okay, so when we turn that off, what we're going to get is this, right? And you look at that and you're like, oh man, that's like some vicious looking, like primitive weapon, right? It's like really just downright, like this looks like a caveman weapon, you know? But to show an example of, you know, how we can push shape or form language in this case, this is a way that we can actually, it's exceptional. You know, we can say, okay, well, it's literally a dinosaur bone kind of weapon. And that's the way it's being utilized here. So let's do the other one here. And in this case, we're going to say it's still made up of, you know, familiar materials like metal, but it's shaped in a way that it's dinosaur bone-like. So I'm going to copy the nice forms here of this metal, but I'm going to try to make this more of a man-made type material. So in this case, since we're saying that it's inspired by the shape of a dinosaur, but it's not using the bones, I'm actually going to stylize this as much as I can to justify that, okay, it's inspired by, you know, dinosaur bones, but it's actually still made from the materials of metal. And it's been crafted in a way that it's visually dinosaur looking, but it's composed of metallic parts. So here it's going to get a little bit complex just because of the amount of shapes we have here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of simplify this edge here. And I'm going to just take just some of the shapes here. Not all of them, because if we take all of them, then it starts to kind of break the look that it's made up of, that it's handmade. You know, we want it to make it feel like it's been purposely blacksmithed to look like, you know, this is dinosaur bone inspired blade. And you can see that I'm actually going off of the silhouette here. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of simplify this stuff. And the reason being is that I'm actually trying to use a majority of the shape here to have just kind of that nice balance between the general gesture and what we want to add in. And then here, we can keep clean, or we can say, okay, well, there's maybe some openings. And these openings create for, you know, to lighten the metal, per se. And I probably want to make it as symmetrical in the sense that it's following the same shape. Not symmetrical this way, but symmetrical this way. Right? Because it is handcrafted. So it's going to be done in a more controlled manner. And here I'm going to go ahead and, since this is a blade, I'm going to go ahead and follow the impression here. To kind of give it that nice, you know, that there is a defined sharp edge. See? So you notice how this part was actually quicker, right? It's just a really quick sketch, just demonstrating how we can actually arrive at this point. It's a very simple design exercise here. You know, the design here is actually quite a simple one, but we definitely have a different vibe. We have a different type of design look here for this particular sword. You know, and we use the silhouettes here in this case to figure out, you know, how we can arrive at this sort of shape, right? So that's the benefit of using this type of technique. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of alter this stuff. And maybe this is kind of like a leather or something. So give this a shot, guys. So you guys can kind of see the two differences of these weapons. Oh, not to forget, we got to fill it in. My favorite part, right? The part where we get to kind of just relax a little bit. And what's great about this part is, you know, I get to kind of just analyze, you know, how the design looks. It's like, okay, I got a lot of interesting things going on. There's some areas that I can use a little bit more emphasis. There's some areas that are working better than other areas, and so that's kind of the beauty of kind of being able to step away from your design or not think about it too you know, too critically, and just kind of like look at it as like what's your impression of it and what's working, what's immediately speaking out to you. So in this particular design, the part that I like is I definitely like the shapes of the aggressive nature of this, you know, this blade and how like aggressive it looks. But I think where it can use a little bit more emphasis is possibly kind of the actual forms of the actual the jaw itself. You know, like, is it flat? Is there some thickness to it? How do we showcase that? You know, so that might be something where I can showcase it in the actual rendering phase. But this is definitely a design that I would consider taking to the next level. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in this one here. And what's great about this one is that, one, it's simple, and obviously the line drawing looks less impressive just because of the amount of detail that's clearly not as comparable to the other one above. But when it comes to the actual design, I thought this one was actually very simple, and there's a lot of things that are working that I like. There's some things that I would have definitely simplified, like for example this area here. I just feel like it can use a little bit more simplicity. It's either go one way or the other, right? Go more complex or go more simple. And so that's going to be kind of the rule of thumb when you guys are designing is, you know, either go simple and think about the gestures, or go more complex and think about kind of, you know, getting that amount of texture and that grittiness in. So for something like this, I can say, well, it might be better to just have a simple gesture here. It just might serve as a better design choice for this, you know, instead of trying to get overly complex. And maybe here too. I don't know if that needs simplifying, but maybe the areas that need complexity is this area here, the details. And what I'm doing here is I'm just adding this kind of perceived detail. It's like a little bit of, you know, carving marks and stuff like that that can represent something, or it can just be scumbling. Just add a little bit more thickness to these individual handle bits here. Just to give that extra oomph, right? So I just duplicated the line weight, just thicken it up, and I'm going to erase away just to kind of pop the drawing just a little bit. It was looking a little light, just because of the way I drew it. But yeah, guys, this concludes this section of the demo for props, and I just want to do a quick recap here. So we got the props here, and we got the characters right here. So that is form language for you guys, and this is just the beginning phases. Take everything that I said with obviously a grain of salt. You know, see what works for you guys, and see what you can invent and come up with. I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this tutorial. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next segment. Thank you very much. Have a good night.